everybody. Our speaker for tonight, Annie Mardiney, has a master's degree in anthropology and a varied career, including work as a teaching assistant, postal worker, music producer, concert promoter, and arts administrator. For almost 2 decades, Annie has held 6 state and federal permits that allow her to rehabilitate and possess wild birds. Since 2019, she's taken in about 350 injured or orphaned wild birds per year in the rehab facility she maintains in Rosendale and releases about 60% of them back to the wild. She currently has 11 unreleasable raptors that she uses for educational purposes at schools and other venues. It takes 2 years to complete the process for approval to designate a bird as unreleasable and to use it for educational purposes. The majority of unreleasable birds are sadly euthanized, but humanely so. In addition to displaying some birds tonight, Annie will answer questions such as how to become a wildlife rehabber, what to do in situations such as when a bird hits a window, a nest falls out of a tree, or when an injured bird is encountered on the road. Welcome, Annie Mardiney.
Anyhow, thank you for that introduction and for the invite to speak for a little while. You should definitely ask me questions as we go along. There's a lot of stuff we could cover, and there's never enough time, in my opinion. But I want to show you 4 different birds that I have that are there's 3 education birds and 1 bird that's with me in rehab right now. They're kept separately in separate buildings, and I treat them completely separately. The ones that are from the wild, that are injured or orphaned, the goal is always to get them back out in the wild. So they're not handled by me. I don't pet them like I pet this guy. And I tried very hard to keep them as wild as possible. This guy is an example of a very, can you see him? There he is.
Yeah, let me see him.
Can you tip your screen down a little bit more?
Even more.
There.
We're still seeing a lot of wall above your head.
Sure why that happened.
That's better. That's better.
Well,
Whoa,
you know what? Because I see there's like a sentence above the screen that's, as long as you can see me, it's fine, but I see my head cut off, and that's okay. So this is, let me show you these birds and you can ask questions about them. So I have had a wildlife rehab permits from New York State and U.S. Fish and Wildlife for generally it's about 20 years I've had the permits. What I tell young people, I do a fair number of programs for schools and summer camps and such. What I tell older kids, especially who are kind of starting to think maybe about their future, is that what I do is not a career. It truly is not. There's no money trickling down from state or federal anything to help wildlife rehabbers. So I mean, it's important for kids to figure out at some point what they want to do with the bulk of their time and how they're going to earn enough money and maybe love what they're doing. A lot of kids that I talk to, especially, are there because, well, their teacher says you're going to sit here and listen to me, but they love rap, they love wildlife, they love wild birds. They think it's really cool, and they don't like sitting in the 4 walls of school. It's going to jump off my glove any second. It's not time for bed, Mang. I'm sorry. You're staying up late tonight. So you know what I tell them is if that's true, if you're pretty sure you don't want to be stuck inside a building of any kind the rest of your life working, but you love being outside, get a biology degree to begin with, and it's usually involves a 4-year, BS degree, followed often by a couple more years in a specialty or in a solid career that hopefully you figure out then. So if you want to be a vet, there's additional time with colleges. If you want to be an exotic vet, which is anything other than dogs and cats, exotic vets are, what do your snakes, your guinea pigs, your parakeet, and hopefully wild birds. That's a little extra training, and you can earn serious money, of course, by becoming a veterinarian or a research biologist or a field biologist, or maybe a science teacher who takes the kids out on a science treks with falconers or planting trees or something. But I just remember when I was a teenager, I didn't feel like I had any adult guidance and as to where to go. So I started as an anthropologist. I went to Cornell as a grad student in anthropology and urban and regional development in South America, which I loved. I loved traveling down to Peru and other parts of South America. But at one point, I just realized that my end career was going to be teaching inside a classroom or living abroad for the bulk of the rest of my life. Meanwhile, the Cornell Lab of Ornithology was like a mile over there. And I shared housing with a couple ornithology grad students, and I was, if I could do a do-over, that's what I would do, is become an ornithologist, right? Okay, so anyhow, here's Meng. He is a peregrine falcon. He's a male, which you can tell from the color of his back and his wings. Also, he was born under the Mid-Hudson Bridge. I'm not sure how many people know this, but New York State did a really good thing about almost 30 years ago now, when peregrines and other raptors were disappearing very fast, mainly because of DDT making eggshells thin, and so a lot of these raptors were laying eggs that would not hatch. One of the things they did was ban DDT eventually from, I think it was in 1973. And in New York State, the DEC put platforms, basically long wooden planks under every bridge from the city up to Albany. And the one platform only, because peregrines who are mating and raising a bunch of kids will not tolerate other peregrines nearby. And they need and want high places. The bridges are perfect, high rises in New York City. There's usually 3 pairs that find places on the cliffs and the Shwangunks. And the peregrines use them. They generally, the same adults come back to the same bridge, have a batch of eggs, raise them up, teach them how to fly and hunt, and then go back to Central or South America. Meng was born under the Mid-Hudson Bridge. He's almost 8 years old. When he fledged, when his fluff turned to feathers, he was practicing flying and just ended up above where the cars and all the trucks are. We don't know exactly what happened, but he wasn't a strong flyer yet. It takes a while to build up those muscles. And he probably was confused by the chaos of the bridge. He hit a box truck. The Bridge Authority staff have cameras everywhere, and we're absolutely totally watching for the peregrines. They love their peregrines. They have cameras on them. There's a live cam on the Mid-Hudson Bridge, under the Mid-Hudson Bridge, on that peregrine nest right now. And there's 4 nestlings there. The state sends this one particular person. He works for, I think, the DEP, but he rappels down to every nest that happens under the bridges and takes a blood sample of every peregrine nestling and puts 3 leg bands on each bird. It's kind of hard to see, but Meng has 3 different leg bands on him because these birds are still endangered in New York State. Their population hasn't gone back up to World War II levels yet. So that's the goal. So Meng, anyhow, we hit a truck, came to me an hour later. Peter, who may be watching here, actually was kind enough to pick up this nestling for me. I worked for the post office at the time, so I couldn't like ditch the truck and go get I wish I could have. But anyhow, Peter brought me this bird. I tended to him for about 2 months with a veterinarian's help. He had cluster seizures. He was a mess. I really thought every morning that he would be dead when I do my walk around with my cup of coffee and I open crates, of the damaged birds. So he's alive and every day he was still alive. And so 2 months later, I thought he was ready for release. And then I realized that, I don't know if you can see this, but he's not doing the show that we have worked on. It turns out his right eye is blind from the head trauma that he had. His left eye works. There he goes. So I can't release a one-eyed raptor, especially a peregrine falcon. I'll tell you what, the first graders in New York State have in their curriculum, which I don't know the details about, but in their curriculum across the state, they are required to learn a lot about native wildlife, native plants, native insects in the first grade. And they are riveted by these guys. I mean, it's amazing. This bird gets a lot of people to pay attention. Now, I'm going to assume that who's ever watching this may already know that this is the fastest animal that we know of on the planet. Raise your hand if you, do you know, when they hunt birds and they jump off of high perches, as I said before, they go after flying birds for the most part and can go as fast as 240 miles an hour. So that is the fastest thing that we know about. And most first graders can tell you that. It's really cool. When I go to the schools and the hands go up and want to tell me all about peregrine falcons. It's so cool. Anyhow, he's with me for the rest of his life or until I retire. He could live, if everything goes well, for 20 years, right, Mang? He's not talking. Now he's quiet. I'm going to tether him and try to get out another bird. Is that okay with you guys?
Yeah.
I know I talk a lot and then time escapes. Go, Mang.
Do the sounds that he's making now mean anything?
Those mean, I don't know exactly, but it means something like, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, and pay more attention to me. He's something else. He is something else. When I walk around out in my on my property to go feed or close up the other buildings, he totally knows. He can hear me walking. He knows the sound of my truck. He hears me interacting with the other birds on my property, and just he's so loud. It's something else. He thinks I'm his mate. I'm certain of that. And sadly, I can't change it. Too late. All right. Let me get down here and see if we can see this one. All right. Can you see this okay?
Yes.
All right. So this is, you hear that? That's standard owl chatter. That means you are in my space. I don't like it. Let me go. I'm going to do something mean if you don't leave me alone. Or like all owls do that clicking. This is a bird that's in rehab. It's a baby barred owl, B-A-R-R-E-D. It's probably a month old right now. There's a phase called branchers for barred owls anyhow, and for great horned owls, where they're too big and strong to stay in their nest usually a hole in a tree somewhere. So they hop out, they get out on the nearest branch by their nest. Usually they stay up there and their parents continue to feed them and take care of them. Sometimes they get knocked off the branch by their sibling, bigger bro or a gust of wind, or they're just not paying attention and they fall quite a distance.
Excuse me, Andy, when you tried to move the camera down, it popped right back up. So we're really only just seeing the very top of his head.
That's no fun. Here we go.
Yeah, if there's some way you could keep the camera down like that, that would be great. Oh, that's perfect.
If it would only stay there.
Yeah.
Hold on a second.
She is beautiful. Or
Yeah.
he.
I don't know. Is that any better?
Yes, that's much better.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
much better.
All right. So this barred owl was somehow out of the nest. It was a little young. Took a hard fall and didn't he bite me, bugger? Look at this. This is a wild bird. This is not a bird that wants to be hanging on with me right here. It pulled a tendon or tendons in this wing. So for now, it's just a simple wing wrap, so that it hopefully just stabilizes, and within 2 weeks, and I can take that wrap off and see that if the wing is doing okay. Doesn't have a fracture as far as I know. It is able to hang out with I have 3 other baby barred owls right now. and they are out in a building with a ramp from the floor to the highest perch. It's like a 12-foot perch up there. They can scramble, like rock climb up, and they hang out together all day on the top perch, but they are unable to fly yet. So there they sit cuddled together like big shots. And I do feed them. So I hand feed them still in the morning. I climb a ladder at night and take them back down and put them actually in crates in my triage area so I can keep a better eye on them. You are quite angry with me, aren't you? Yeah. And I want to make sure they're eating enough. Pretty soon they should be able to fly down. There'll be some accidents, but these owls, the owlets that I had that came in just in the last 2 weeks, it's like the barred owls were all over the place the last couple of weeks. And a lot of them were having a lot of trouble. I had 2 that ended up passing away. Sometimes the parents don't continue to feed them when they don't climb back up the tree. So the ones that I took in were either injured or absolutely starving, right? And then we had torrential rain for a number of days. And so these little guys are soaking wet and not happy. And right now the 4 are doing really well. And pretty soon I will stop taking them in at night because they should be able to learn to fly around and get their own food, fly back up, strengthen their ability to fly. I have actually 3 adult barred owls right now that are in rehab. It's very possible that I'll put these guys in with 1 or 2 of the adults. I'll hold on to the adults a little longer than normal so that they can mentor these guys. One of the most important skills they have to learn is how to hunt live mice at some point. So once they're feathered out and they're self-sufficient that way, they recognize mice, they recognize food, then I buy a limited number of live mice. I have a special way of putting them in a big livestock bin where the mice cannot jump out or climb out. But they make noise because I put leaves in there. I put some water and food for the mice too. And that usually kicks the instinct, the hunting instinct in for these little ones. Plus an adult makes all the difference too. An adult that mentors them, it really works well. You know, the idea is to release these guys with all the skills, or as best as I can, all the skills they need to live a good life, hunt well. You know, things I can't do is teach them to avoid cars, avoid dogs, that kind of thing. I'm gonna put this one back. Get back in there. I have 2 more birds to show you guys. Should I answer any general questions about becoming a rehab? Is that of interest to people?
No, but can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
I think of barred owls as being streaky,
Well, this
brown,
do you see
streaky.
these feathers?
Yeah, like that.
Those are from adult barred owls.
But that little puppy it looks like it just looks like a little kitten. When's it gonna lose that fuzz? And how old is it now?
It's about a month old. It's about a month old. And its feathers are growing in. I mean, they're like called pin feathers. They're under all that fluffy fluff. They're maybe an inch long, and they're growing pretty fast. In fact, every time they flap their little wings, there's like little dust cloud of fluffy fluff that's just naturally falling off as their feathers grow in. These are from a full-grown female barred owl, and they're wing feathers, so they're, you know, the longest feathers on an owl. But I don't, like I said, I have 3 barred owls right now, adults, but they're wild and they're in rehab, so I really can't bring them inside the house. That would freak them out, and it's not protocol. Anyhow, that's what those are. So barred owls are the most common owl in North America right now. They're definitely the most common owl in the Northeast. My buddy Peter Corey, who might still be watching, like I said, he's also a bird rehabber out of New Paltz. I think we both get more barred owls than any other species of raptor. Probably the second most common are red-tailed hawks, youngsters and adults. year-round, barred owls and red-tailed hawks, because most of them stay up here all winter. First-year raptors often have a really tough time surviving the winter. Even now, when the winters are not so bad up here, they don't have the hunting skills of a 10-year-old red-tailed hawk. They possibly are intruding on somebody else's territory, and they get bullied and moved on. If they're not hunting well, any raptor that's not hunting well starts going downhill within a few days. I can when I get a downed raptor, almost any kind, one of the first things I do is check their keel bone, their breastbone, and their backbone. And if they're very prominent, like these terrible pictures of starving dogs and underfed horses and such. It's similar. It's just a simple way to figure out, like, are they a good weight? Do they have? Are they starving? Or are they not starving? And usually the ones in the winter are starving. They're also, this time of year, they're often dehydrated. You can tell there's a whole list of things you can check real quick within 3 or 4 minutes when you pick up a raptor that's having some sort of difficulty, and lack of food, injuries, parasites, especially maggots from flies, all sorts of fun stuff like that, right? Anyhow,
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you are there courses that you take? What kind of schooling do you have to take to become a bird rehabilitator? Oh, and does he ever get to fly?
Yeah. All these birds have. Well, the babies, like I said, I take them in at night. But all the education birds I have their own flight buildings that we call mews. They're like fancy sheds, basically. They're all mine are made out of wood. I designed them myself. I begged and bribed a Amish barn company up here to give me a deep discount. Yes, I did, because I have 10 buildings and 12 enclosures from there. All of them have atriums, which are really important, because you don't want to open the only door on one of these buildings and everybody flies out. That's really not good. So every building has an atrium for safety purposes. I forget what the question was. Like, ask me again. What was the question?
I wanted to know what kind of training or schooling you need to be a bird rehabber.
I think it's a calling for any wildlife rehabber. You know how there's like people that end up rescuing dogs and kittens and horses and all the rest. They may have day jobs and make serious money elsewhere, but it's not in any kind of rescue or rehab. I always had a really deep interest in wild birds. I was one of those. I think I'm the only kid I know that would, when we were brought to a park or a playground, I would run for the pine trees in the distance and crawl on my hands and knees looking for owl pellets. And my brothers and sisters would be doing normal things like playing on the playground or swimming or something. And I started off by really, the only thing I was really allowed in our house was chickens. I had some chickens when I was a kid. Eventually, I also got distracted by humans. I did some traveling, a lot of traveling actually in Latin America, and felt like I could make a difference. I had these big dreams that I could make some kind of a difference as a migrant specialist, or a anthropologist. And that's where I ended up going to Cornell. If I could do a do-over, I would absolutely become a biologist or ornithologist, and not a vet so much, because they work so hard and they mainly deal with dogs and cats. I'm more interested in protecting wildlife, especially wild birds. And so, in answer to your question, there are conferences that you can go to if you're interested in any kind of wildlife rehab. Like, most states have a state wildlife rehab nonprofit organization that has like a conference once a year. New York does. It shifts from one side of the state to the other. It's usually a long weekend. There's guest speakers. There's wet labs or hands-on labs that teach you basics, like how to do a wing wrap on a raptor, how to give sub-Q fluids to a squirrel or a bird. Using, these are deceased animals they're working on in these wet labs. And veterinarians are usually the ones leading those. You can, there's deeper required courses or hours needed for people who want to work with rabies vector species, RVS species. Most states require that wildlife rehabbers get more than just a, what's called a class 1 permit to deal with wildlife. If you want to work with rabies vector species, raccoons, skunks, and bats in New York State, you have to go to an all-day course, which is given in different places by New York State over the year, and you have to pass a written test. And then you also have to have a site inspection of whatever your facility is, but it can't be your kitchen. It's, it gets complicated when you want to deal with large mammals like bears. It's more than just a basic permit. Like the state has these higher or deeper level requirements that require coursework and a written test usually, and a site inspection. For birds, and all of the most birds in New York in our country are considered migratory birds and are protected by U.S. Fish and Wildlife. So to work with wild birds, you have to first get a New York State DEC Class 1 wildlife rehab permit. That's a written test given twice a year. Usually, I think it's April and October. It's they send you you sign up online. They send you a study guide. It's the written test is 100 multiple choice questions right from the book, and you never leave a blank, right? Remember that? Like any multiple choice questions. And if you don't know the answer, you go back and everything is C. No, I'm joking. I don't know. But you have to pass at least 80% of the questions, and then you're a wildlife rehabber. But for wild birds, since they're federally protected, you also have to wait a year and compile a pretty massive amount of documentation. On the U.S. Fish and Wildlife website, there's an application that you can look at. It's well worth looking at if someone's really interested in working with native birds, with wild birds. I would say absolutely spend some time looking at the Fish and Wildlife page for the details that you have to provide. There's no test, but you have to send in photographs of your facility, whether it's stacked up crates or custom buildings or sheds, that sort of thing. You have to write detailed information about what species you want to, or what categories of birds you want to work with. There's a huge difference between working with songbirds and raptors and water birds. So it's really just running you through the info so you do your homework and you know what you're getting into. You can do all of them. You just have to write a little paragraph about every single species you want to work with, what you're going to feed them, what kind of housing you're going to give them. There's also a requirement to have I think one or two letters, I think, from existing wild bird rehabbers. So I get asked to write letters for newbies as a reference, so that they know you have someone to ask. You pick up the phone, or you pick up your cell phone, you ask someone questions. They also want to get a letter from at least one veterinarian who will work with you. Doesn't mean they're going to work for free. It just means that they will see your wild birds as needed. And now there's an additional requirement that USDA have. It's a whole new permit with USDA for animal welfare. For people who, like me, who want to have education raptors, that's another complex application. It's not a test. It's a compilation of data. You read 360 pages, I kid you not, on the USDA website about what criteria you have to meet if you have education raptors. It's very detailed, but it's not particularly relevant to birds. It's based on dogs, cats, and research primates. So it's new to them too, but so there's some strange stuff in there that might change as time goes on. And they do a site inspection. The USDA does a site inspection. I had mine, it's a new thing. I got my site inspection in February, and thank God I passed, and apparently the inspector liked me. I was like better than most places. I don't know. It's such a new thing. But they can drop in anytime. So that's the, you gotta be able to cope with that, I guess. They can't go on your property if you're not there, but the inspector can come back any old time over the year, and they will. If you're not there, they call you, wait for half an hour, see if you can get home. If you can't, they'll come back another surprise time. So there's a lot of these hoops you have to jump through. It's not for, I don't think wildlife rehab on a big scale is, even on a small scale, it's not easy. You have to be financially secure somehow. You have to maybe become a nonprofit and do a lot of fundraising. I don't want to do that. I'm not a nonprofit. I don't want to spend my time doing more paperwork. I just don't. I've done that my whole life, and I've got enough right now.
Annie,
Yes, ma'am.
you offered us 4 birds.
Oh, darn. I did. And we're
You
almost out of
did, and I love seeing the birds. I really,
Didn't I say I talk too much? Didn't I?
no, it's not that you're talking too much. It's just that I really want to see the other birds.
The other two are both education birds. Hold on a second. So I have, now, can you see this one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, hold on. She's flipping around. Come on, Sarah. Settle down. All right, now do you see her? That is
Yeah.
an American kestrel, a female. You can see that this wing, after I clipped those long wing feathers because her wing is hanging all the time, and she trips on the long feathers. So this way she can hop around pretty good without stumbling over herself. She was born somewhere on Stewart Airport property. She's probably about 8 years old now, and one of the maintenance people on the property actually saw her. He said she was being chased by a abatement falcon. So there are abatement dogs, you know, the sheep dogs that run after geese to chase them away. There's also people who have trained falconry birds who chase the geese primarily. But in this case, hey, Tara, she was learning to fly, and she got spooked by the hawk and hit the side of a building, of one of the hangars down there, and fell to the ground. The maintenance guy was kind enough to scoop her up and bring her up to me. It's pretty cool. She's very talkative too. So these are native falcon, like the smallest falcon in our world, in this part of the world. There's a third falcon in our area. So there's the peregrine falcon, kestrel, and a falcon called a merlin. She's pretty upset with me because it's her bedtime too, right? She's actually a very sweet bird. She will perch on a tabletop perch like Megan's doing when we do long exhibits, long days where people are just coming by, and she'll just perch and perch and perch and look at people and hop up and down and just be a really good raptor ambassador, right? Well, she definitely can't fly. This is a bird that the only other option would have been to humanely euthanize her. There is no place in the United States where you can keep a wild bird as a pet because you feel sorry for it. You have to go through these, you have to have the permits. One of the things that I found interesting is that there are some Facebook, social media pages where other rehabbers across the country are trying to find a permanent placement for wildlife that can't be released. And every state it's interesting, every state has different rules about mammals and reptiles and snakes and things. But because these birds are federally protected, it doesn't matter what state you're in. You cannot have one as a pet. You can't, like, there's just so many ways that these guys are protected, at least on paper, that, you know, it's really good. Whereas there are states where you can have a pet raccoon, which makes me, I don't understand that kind of stuff. But in New York State, you can't have a pet anything that's wild, with that kind of light. Right? Oh, no. Okay, let me bring out one more bird. There you go. All right. All right, here we go. This is a screech owl. Is anybody home yet? You guys home? You see this?
Do we see it?
Oh, yeah.
There she is. Oh, so this is a very old, probably 10-year-old eastern screech owl. We have two colors in our area. This is a rufous one, and we also have gray screech owls. There's 5 colors of screech owls in North America. They can interbreed. There's not a huge difference between them, although the western screech owls I hear are a little bit bulkier. I get a handful of screech owls every year that have, mostly I get them because they hit cars. That's usually the reason I end up with a screech owl. And actually barred owls too. A lot of these owls, they get hungry and active at dusk. They will fly, or they'll perch along roadways very often because they can see the roadway or a field where dinner could be, rodents, snakes, etc. When they target a meal, like a mouse running across the road, they really don't look right or left for cars. They just go. And sometimes they get spooked by vehicles or by the headlights, and they also fly off their perches and just get hit because cars really, these birds, when they come towards your windshield, they're moving fast, and it's impossible really to avoid them if they're coming across your path. And I tell the high schoolers who are they're about to learn to drive, I tell them, I lecture them a little bit about wildlife incidents with a car, and just say, don't take any chances. Don't slam on the brakes and go in a ditch. Don't, if someone's on your just be so careful. I think our instincts, I think most humans actually are compassionate and don't want to hurt animals. But there's so many times with wildlife where you can't do anything. It's just it's dangerous out there for humans in cars, and it's dangerous for wildlife with cars. The only thing possible really is to find a place to pull over safely. Take the GPS location, for example. If you saw an owl or a hawk or something on the road, send that GPS location to me or one of the other wild bird rehabbers, or mammal rehabber, and chances are that one of us will be able to get out there and help find the animal, the bird, the mammal. That's one thing. You can keep a list of wildlife rehabbers in your county, in your glove compartments, and hopefully if you have Wi-Fi, you can be able to text people. With all these birds, with all these wildlife calls, I actually don't pick up the phone that much anymore unless I recognize the name or it's a first responder. I get calls from the Thruway authority quite a bit about damaged hawks on the Thruway, for example, or state police someplace on SUNY campus, whatever, that have a injured animal or bird. But generally what rehabbers really need to get is a text with a few sentences about what the animal is, what the problem is, where it is, and a photograph. Those are the things we need in a nutshell to be able to react quickly and hopefully go collect an animal or send one of our partners to go find the animal.
Annie, I'm curious about their intelligence. Have there been any incidents where you were surprised by their intelligence, or like the comparison between species of the intelligence, or anything like that you can talk about?
Well, I can a little bit. I have a bird that's called a kite, a Mississippi kite. They're warm weather raptors. They mainly they're common like down in Florida and Texas, and they go into South America and then come back up to the southeast in our summer. They've been coming up north little by little the last few years because of climate change. They eat insects mainly, so they're following the food. I had this Mississippi kite because she can't fly. She has a bum wing, and I think she's one of the smartest raptors that I personally know. understands very simple phrases. Like when we're packing up to go to a program, I'll hold her like this by a pet carrier and say, pop in. And she does, she goes in. Like, whoa. It's like, none of these raptors talk. I mean, they don't talk like a parrot talks. All the birds that I've experienced, once they're adults and if they're my education birds, and they've been with me for a while, they absolutely know my routine, the routine I should be sticking to. They know the difference between me and other people. Sometimes I'll have someone bring a critter here that's easier for me, and if I have time, I'll give them a really quick tour. And we don't go inside the buildings, but I can tell you absolutely all my birds know the difference between me and you. And they go off into a corner and make a fuss because that is a change. They don't like change. These birds do not like change. If I wear a different hat when the weather changes, it might take a few days before, especially the owls, kind of stop making a fuss just because I have a hat on that they don't recognize. It's like, it takes a while. There are some, none of my birds are trained to return to me like a falconry bird. The fact is most of them can't fly, so it's kind of not all that useful to teach them to fly to me. But I have a great horned owl that will, many of my birds will take food from my hand, but it's quiet times in the morning when I'm doing my dawn walk around or at night. There's no distractions. The dogs are not allowed anywhere near my birds. So there's some and they all have different personalities. The different species really very much do. I mean, I feel like, my buddy Peter may be watching still. He have a different opinion, but I feel like of all the raptors that I take in, especially that adult wild barred owls are more dangerous than any other wild raptor I take in.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you, Peter.
Sorry. I'm under my mom's name because the computer I had didn't link up, but
yes, thank you, Linda. Yes, I hear you, Peter.
agreed. They're any of the wild barred owls or any of the wild adult raptors are totally
Yeah.
Definitely, they will do damage if you're working with them. You always have to be careful, but yes.
one really important thing that everybody learns, usually the hard way, is that you never turn your back to
Correct.
really any wild raptor. The ones that are education birds are a little more predictable, like but generally speaking, you do not turn your back when you're in a building and walk out face first, because you're going to get it from the back. And
Sure.
Adult raptors do not want to be with you. So the minute that they're feeling better, whatever it is their issue is, when they're feeling better, one of the sure signs that they're getting closer to release is when they attack you, like seriously mean to get you.
Yeah.
Barred owl talons are absolute razor blades. I don't know what Peter does at his place right now, but most of my raptor buildings, I have a welder's face mask hanging in the atrium of where the birds are. They're wild raptors or they're a little bit unpredictable. Like sometimes, I mean, there's a few raptors I have that are a little unpredictable, but I'd rather have a face mask on than one of those yellow, helmets, plastic helmets that some people have. Raptors will attack you if they're feeling better and they're wild to begin with. So, and in terms of intelligence, I think, the most intelligent birds I've met are parrots. That's my limited experience. I think they're as smart as my dogs for the most part. And I also know that there's many of my education raptors understand basic things. Like my great horned owl and I have a little chat every morning when I'm walking around with food. She comes over to a particular perch every morning waiting for me to show, because that is where we talk. That's where we have our coffee. So she, she's funny that way. And I appreciate that. It's nice to be kind of recognized by a wild thing. I don't know that it's love, but I know it's recognition, right? And I know about intelligence. That's a whole other thing, right? They
Yeah.
they certainly have super skills, superpowers that we do not have. Hearing, eyesight, flight, all these superpowers that I mean, I used to dream about those all the time. And I think a lot of kids do. What would it be like to be able to fly, like really fly, right?
How are they with smell?
Not much of a sense of smell. The only raptors in our area that have a good sense of smell are turkey vultures. In fact, black vultures, who are now very common up here, they don't have an awesome sense of smell. They actually watch the turkey vulture. They're very smart, actually. Vultures are very smart. The black vultures absolutely watch the turkey vultures. And whatever the turkey vultures are, we call them TVs, by the way. Wherever the TVs are swirling around, the black vultures know there's food, and they're bigger and badder, and they move right on in, and the TVs leave. Like, they're not stupid. They know you don't mess with black vultures. So that's, I mean, there's certain but smell is not I mean, I don't know about birds across the world, but I believe that, as far as I know, just turkey vultures have an excellent sense of smell. One of the things that does happen in the songbird world is, there's this myth about how you can't pick up a baby bird and put it back in its nest. It is a myth. Songbirds don't have a sense of smell. They really don't. And you can pick up a safe bird, a robin or something, put it back in its nest, and the parents will still feed it and take care of it. But what does happen, especially out in the field, out in the wild, is that we leave our human scent on the grass or the tree or the bush or whatever we touch. And that might lead a coyote or a feral cat or something to wherever the nest is. So that's been proven actually up at Minnewaska and Sam's Point. There's been some very specific research about that. So not they can't smell the birds, but they can sure smell that a human being went over there and did something, and it can cause trouble.
Annie, first of all, this is wonderful. I'm really enjoying this, and thank you so much for all your wonderful efforts in saving these and helping out these wonderful animals. My wife and I live on a pretty good swath of land in Millbrook, Clinton Corners area, and we have two small dogs, and we're very concerned, 6-7 pound long-haired Chihuahuas, and we're very concerned about going out with them. We're always hovering over them because we have red-tailed hawks and we have owls and so on. How concerned should we be? And what's the type of animals would they go after a 7-pound long-haired Chihuahua?
So, I mean, there's no one answer, but informally, I can tell you that the only like YouTube videos or Facebook videos I've seen of raptors catching up domestic pets have been of like red-tailed hawks or great horned owls picking up kittens, like small cats, and going off with them because they can pick them up and go. Also, any chickens that are not completely put inside at night and ideally not free ranging, completely covered, run. Any loose chicken is fair game if you're a wild one, especially this time of year when coyotes, fox, and big raptors are trying to feed their babies. It's the only raptor that can pick up something heavy and go off with it around here are eagles, golden and bald eagles. But bald eagles are mainly interested in fish and roadkill, or they're scavenging. I'm not so sure about. I mean, golden eagles are big enough to pick something up like a Chihuahua, but they're very rare around here. You only see them when they're migrating to the Delaware Water Gap or someplace further south. They're very uncommon in our area. The main animals that you have to worry about are bantam chickens, for example, and kittens or small cats. Bantam chickens are small enough for a red tail to pick up if they can get it. I get called, and I think Peter gets called fairly regularly by people who have backyard chickens, and
Yep.
when they're completely fenced in, like a Cooper's hawk is a pretty svelte, kind of slender, but super fast little
Right.
raptor, and they hunt birds. That's their specialty. They mainly target songbirds at feeders. They're like, that's very smart. They have become very accustomed to human habitats and the very big likelihood that there's a bird feeder, and they will pick off those songbirds easily. But they'll also manage to wiggle their little selves into a chicken coop, into a run, and kill a couple chickens or even all of them and eat in there because they're too lightweight to pick them up. And also they can't get out. They like get in, but they can't figure out how to get out. So that's when Peter and I get calls for, will we please go get this hawk out of their chicken coop?
Exactly. I
Right?
get calls very often of usually like a Cooper's hawk or maybe a sharp-shinned hawk, hey, I have this hawk in my chicken run and the chickens are going crazy, and that's usually when I get a call about small hawk of this sorts in a closed area and can't get out, and but I do get the calls very often. Yeah.
So in answer to your, it's not a direct answer to your question about your chihuahuas or really small dogs, but honestly, in this area, I probably wouldn't let them free range in the backyard. Like I have 3 labs and they have a dog door, and the yard is fenced. They can do whatever they want outside. Like nothing's gonna mess with them because they're just too big. But a small dog like that, I probably would keep it on a leash or be out there with them, especially this time of year. The bigger threat is not raptors, but it's coyote and fox, because they will come in the daytime, as you probably already
Yeah,
know.
the foxes especially,
Yeah.
they'll move very, very fast, and
Yeah.
they're not intimidated by you standing next to
Not
them.
at all.
Yeah,
There was you probably heard about this a few years ago. There was 2 cases of somewhat larger dogs, but I don't know what kind they were, some kind of terriers, up in New Paltz across from Unison. 2 different dogs were actually caught in broad daylight by coyotes that were denned not too far away. It was in the span of might have been a couple weeks, and I think it was 2 different families, but they just let their medium-sized doggies outside to pee or whatever. Coyote came, gone, and there's video of that. Yeah, so the DEC was contacted, and I am not part of that whole discussion, except the DEC was not willing to trap and remove the coyotes because they were doing nothing strange.
they were doing coyote things.
They were feeding their kids, and their den was nearby, and the DEC was not going to catch and relocate them because they'd have to also get the kids and figure out where.
Yeah.
Everybody's very territorial in the spring too, so that's not a easy thing to do. What they said was that people up in that area, because they knew there was a coyote den there, need to keep their dogs on leash and be with them. And,
Right.
and
Well,
then that was the end of that.
we definitely do that. It's interesting to hear what you said about the raptors and what we should be concerned about, because we also have a pond on our property, and we've seen the raptors come in right when we're working in the garden right next to the pond to get fish out of our pond pretty quickly. So we thought that might be the case with our dogs as well.
The koi ponds that sometimes
And that's what it was. It was koi.
Usually it's I get occasional calls from people, usually newbies up here, who have spent a lot of money landscaping, and they have a koi pond, and they're mad because great blue herons stop there daily and pick off and have lunch.
Oh, the herons, yes.
Dinner. But also snapping turtles move in, and snakes, and I think that koi ponds should just like, I just wouldn't put one in because you're just feeding.
No, we stopped doing
Wildlife.
that. That was our early city to country conversion. Now
Yeah.
that we're full country, we don't have a koi pond anymore.
That's a good thing.
So I see Charlie has his hand up. So how about it's 7:30? How about if we do Charlie's question and then one more after that and then call it a night? Is that okay?
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, it wasn't so much a question as an observation. I've seen adult red tails typically being tail hawks, usually hunting small mammals, and they have superior hunting skills. But an immature red tail will take a small duck off the ground, whereas the adult wouldn't bother. They'd rather catch a squirrel. I don't know whether it tastes better or whatever, but I guess my point being is that um, even though certain birds are more inclined to, when they're mature, to eat mammals, small mammals, the younger, the immature ones will, they get hungry and it's whatever they can get.
Whatever they can get, that's right. Also, one of the mysteries or unknowns about wildlife rehab, especially when we deal with these predators, is how successful they really are, short-term and long-term. We're not allowed to leg ban them. That's a whole nother permit, and you have to be usually connected to a university in a very complex, like scientific long-term study. And so we don't get those leg bans. So we don't really know of the birds that I release, the raptors that I release, how long they live, how successful they are. It's a little hard, but one thing that I do know is that young birds in captivity with us, anyhow, really benefit from being matched with wild raptors that I might have at the moment, or that Peter might have, because the more that they learn from the adults, whether it's their parents or a substitute parent, temporary parent. It's priceless, and it's hard to duplicate that unless you have a lot of birds coming in and you talk to other rehabbers. There's a lot of unknown. I mean, we just don't know, is it worth it long term? I know the reason I do, there's a lot of reasons I work with birds besides loving them, and I know Peter feels the same way, that we think they're awesome, these raptors especially. We see a lot of suffering when we get wild birds and other things, as you can imagine. So it's one of the goals is to keep them from suffering, and whether that means feeding them or heating them up or humanely euthanizing them, it's all good. I mean, it's much better than letting an animal suffer that you can help. And the best end is to set them free again if they're able to survive. That's the best feeling ever. But yeah, to be a wildlife rehabber of anything, you gotta, I don't know what you would call it. I mean, I think I box things in my head so that I don't burn out. Eventually I probably will, but a lot of rehabbers burn out. A couple of years I've seen a lot of death and carnage, and some of it preventable. It's just really sad. It takes a toll. I kind of, I put things in compartments in my head, and every release makes what I do worthwhile. I just released a red-tailed hawk this morning, and unfortunately I tried to videotape these releases. People like to see that stuff, right? And she was, I'm going to call her a slacker or something. I had her for months, and I didn't think she was flying well enough. But I need the space. The end of it is I need the space. So I released her, and wouldn't you know, she like looked at me and like, bam, took off and knocked my phone out of my hand. So you know what? Yeah, she was leeching off me for like a couple of months. But sometimes you don't know. But that's the best thing, is releasing these guys and also dealing one way or another with their, whatever it is that's hurting them and making them suffer. I'm glad we are able to
John's
do
got the last question now, right, John?
Yeah, sure. Do you get paid do you charge to save those birds?
Nope, that's illegal. We can't actually, nowhere in this country can you accept a squirrel or a handful of baby birds and say, well, I'll take them if you give me $100. You actually, you can't do that. So, but people can give us donations. Or, you know, a lot of people, I never ask people for money, I never do, but they ask me. And to be a little smarter about it, I made like a business card, which explains, you know, we're all volunteers. And if you want to make a donation, here's my website. I have a PayPal and Venmo link. I do get paid because I have education birds. I do generally get paid for those programs. I do a bunch of freebies too. So that helps. And I get quite a bit of, I get a lot of donations that pretty much cover my expenses and helped put up all of these buildings over the years. The buildings all cost like $4,000 to $9,000 a piece. There's no way my husband and I can dig into our retirement. There's no way, right? We're not rich, but people are generous.
Annie, can you give us the address of your website?
It's Wild Mountain Birds.
Wild Mountain Birds.
And that's my Facebook page too, which is, it has, you know, cool, what I think are cool videos or photographs of incoming wildlife patients. And, you know, I try to make it kid friendly, and it's not grisly and horrible, but there's a lot of that's just not on my Facebook page because
So
like,
wildmountainbirds.com?
yes.
Okay.
And the Facebook is just Wild Mountain Birds.
And we can donate there?
The
501c3?
website is where the links are. Yeah.
Okay.
For PayPal and Venmo.
Okay. Well, Annie, thank you very much for an excellent presentation. Very